let's start working on the tests on 2 samples in this video. And it's going to be analogous to what we had on the 1 sample tests. So over here we had tests on means and tests on proportions, but then we compared only whether one mean differs from a value and whether only one proportions differs from a certain proportion. But in this case, we're going to compare the means between them because we would compare 2 groups. And we're going to compare proportions between them because with the same logic, we're going to compare 2 groups. So what we're going to have this. For the 2 sample tests, we would have tests on differences between means. That's the first subgroup. So we're going to have here tests on differences between means. So that's the first one, between means. And let's make the association straight ahead with the one sample test. So this one is the difference between 2 means, and we had a test on 1 mean. So these are going to be related. The same analogy. Keep this association in mind. Now with the tests on difference between means, we would also have tests on difference between proportions, which we're going to do later. So we're going to have them here below. Let's do like that because we will need quite a lot of space for the 2 sample tests to include everything. So here we're going to have tests on, here we're going to have test on differences between proportions. Differences between proportions, so proportions. Now, this one is related to the test that we had on 1 proportion. So let's make that association. It's over here. It's over there. So let's do it like that. These are associated. And in the end of all this series, we're going to zoom out and see the big picture. And that's going to be the big picture as a guideline for understanding testing. So that's that. Now, when it comes to the tests on differences between means, what kind of means can we have? What kind of groups can we have? We can have independent groups and dependent groups. So that's the next ramification, so to speak, the next subgroups, right? We could have over here independent groups or independent samples. Let's just say independent samples. That's one. Or we could have dependent samples. Let's write it below. We could have dependent samples. Actually, I'm going to keep the same color because they're associated. So we're going to have here dependent samples. I think it's like that. Dependent samples. Now, with the independent sample, what kind of tests do we have? Well, we have tests where we assume equal variances versus unequal variances. So that's a different ramification over here. We could assume equal variances. So when we have equal variances versus unequal variances, keeping green as well because they are related. So here we can have unequal variances. Now when it comes to the dependent samples, what kind of dependent samples tests do we have to compare their differences? Well, we could have either a matched pairs t-test or a sign test because they're both matched pairs tests. The only difference is that the matched pairs t-test assumes a normal distribution of data, which is called parametric tests. The sign test is used when we do not have a normal distribution of the data, which is called a non-parametric test. So this one over here, let me see how to do it to you know, have enough space because so we're gonna have matched pairs t-test, matched pairs t-test. So we got that versus the sign test. So the sign test is going to be something different. We're going to do it later. But then we need space for proportions. I'm actually going to go below with the proportions there, but this one I'm going to keep for sign test. So sign test like that. Now, this is the highlight. This is the highlight on the tests between means. We're going to have with independent samples. Let me zoom out to see the bigger picture because this is where we are right now. This is the mind map, right? This is the guideline. So this is where we are. Test on differences between means, independent samples, dependent samples. We're going to work in the next video with independent samples because first of all, we need to figure out how can we know if we have equal variances or unequal variances. So this is a concept we're going to work on in one group. So this one we're going to do in the next video because we have a test on variances between 2 groups. We're going to test that first. Based on that conclusion, we will have different formulas for the equal variances and unequal variances. And afterwards, we're going to go to the next ones.